From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. My name's James. You can catch us on Twitter at Don Muraco Pod and of course YouTube, Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. I nearly said fantastic again, but forget about that. We'll go straight to, and also I'm going to plug this as well because Don said it's okay too. Don's personal website, dontherockmuraco.com. So if you want some signed photos, signed figures, signed cards as well, I think you've got as well. You can
whatever.
Yeah, you can head straight to there as well. But for now, we'll introduce the man himself, the magnificent one, Don Muraco. How are you doing?
Aloha, how you doing?
Keep nearly blowing the intro and then interrupting myself, but you know.
Been a dark couple of weeks.
Yeah, it has been a dark couple of weeks, hasn't it? So how many? Yeah. We've had Ultimate Warrior, we've had Dynamite, we've had and Jake Snake Roberts, who we're talking about today as well. So yeah, a dark
and Mick
weeks.
Foley, I guess, if you want to,
Yeah,
he was
the
that was as dark a story as there was, aside from Jake and the molestation and all that other stuff.
Yeah. I think it was when Mick Foley was walking, like in present day. That was probably the scariest sight of all the documentaries as of recent.
Yeah, and he's days away from being like me, just a complete mess. I don't understand. He doesn't seem like he's overly not a crazy ego. He wasn't working for he was just, I don't know what is he wanted to be the best he could or to make an impression, to have a good match, but he sacrificed so much of his body, so much of his future.
Maybe he just didn't have enough ego, that he didn't think he was good enough to be there and therefore took all these extra risks that maybe he didn't need to.
Maybe at one time starting, but when you're in the cage with the Undertaker at WrestleMania, it's pretty much you've reached it. They're paying to see both of you. It's pretty much just you've reached some kind of notoriety in your field.
That was at King of the Ring '98. I remember specifically, and I remember reading his first book that he said that he thought he'd almost reached the end of the road by that point. That's why he ended up allowing himself to take all these crazy risks, because he thought he'd switched characters too many times maybe. And his latest character switch didn't get much of a reception at all.
He was a real pliable character who could lose without losing all his steam or all the heat that he had. He was a guy that was able to lose a match here and there, a big match. So it's he had a beautiful family. Seemed to care about his family. I worked with him one time with Herb Abrams, one of that Herb Abrams productions. He came up there for Herb, and he hadn't been around. I don't think WCW or NWA or certainly not the WWF by that time.
It was WCW.
I've heard him. I'm sorry.
It was WCW the first time. So I think he went to Dallas, then WCW for like maybe 6 months or a year, and then he went to UWF briefly.
Before Herb Abrams, I don't know, but I didn't know him, but I'd heard about him. Where he slams you on the outside on the floor, and then jumps backwards off the apron, and you roll out of the way, and he lands on his back on the cement floor or wooden floor, whatever it was. I was old, and I was just up there for I was using the booking as a Valentine's Day. Took my wife and we were going out to Little Italy and stuff. So I was booked. I think that was the weekend I was booked with him. And he said, "Oh, brother," I said, let's take it easy here. I said, "This is a fly by night operation here." I said, "We don't need to, we don't need to kill each other, or don't go out there and kill yourself. For me, it's just, let's just get through it." So we didn't have any of the, it was a good rugged match, but we didn't have any spectacular death-defying moves.
Yeah. Did he ever profess his love for you and Jimmy Snuka in 1983 cage match?
I've heard that on several of his interviews. several, and he liked that bump I did, the bump I did where I hung myself. Where he lost his ear.
Yeah.
That was his fault. That was all his fault. All he had to do was get back on the apron, get his feet back from the air, and kick himself back up. When you flip yourself up like that, you're too tight. You know, you're and then when you hang over the side, you're hanging, and you are actually hanging on the ropes. I did that for Valentine one night. He started grabbing the ropes and shaking them. I said, "Oh," and I started going off. And I said, "Oh God, I'm going to pass out in front of." I think we're in Philadelphia, 18, 20,000. Oh no, pass out and crap my pants here in front of 20,000 people. Oh God! So I got to work my way back out of it and flip myself back into the ring. But yeah, if you pull yourself out like that, boy, you get a good chance of losing an ear the way he did.
Yeah. Do you remember who was the first person to do the head between the ropes thing?
Oh, that was old. That's an old. I was ever seeing Gene LaBelle, Mark Lewin. Gene LaBelle, before I even started wrestling, depending on the ring, you'd have to have some pretty supple ropes that weren't going to snap your neck off as soon as you flipped over like that, and that you could control, to your, as you sort of more or less pass out going from it. But, there were some ropes, some ring, in those days that there were cable ropes and wire cable, you definitely choke yourself out.
Yeah, was
it if you could even make it over.
Was it only the WWF that seemed to use ropes at the time? Was everyone else using cables, or do you remember?
I don't know. There were good, Florida, Georgia, a lot of the established territories had good rings. But back in the earlier day, I remember New Zealand, some of those places, the ropes, the rings were just, it'd be safer, it's more comfortable wrestling on a concrete floor or asphalt tile. It's just there in Wade Dunedin it's the southernmost just before Invercargill on the South Island. It was a pretty good sized city. In fact, I saw they had a rugby game there, and they had a stadium for about 15, maybe up most 18, 20,000 people way down there, which is pretty outstanding because it's like, maybe 2 hours south of Christchurch on the South Island of New Zealand. And they had a ring where the ropes ran parallel to the end of the apron. And the ring was so hard, and there were dips in it too. And I just, oh God. So there are some rings that are just nightmares.
Did you ever have a ring where there was just like garden hoses for ropes? Yeah,
and cables in between. They garbage garden hose, and they'd run a cable wire in between, and then tighten them on the turnbuckles. God,
right. So you're gonna have to tell me who had the absolute worst ring. If it like the established territories, who had the hardest ring and who had the just worst quality ring?
Hawaii's were pretty bad, especially the one in the Civic. Most of Shires were good. LA's, I gotta say Florida, Georgia, all around there. Australia had nice ring. New Zealand, without a doubt. New Zealand, then Hawaii, pretty far second. But New Zealand had some horrible ones.
And for the hardest, are we probably saying WWF at the time? Because I've heard they were as hard as Chinese algebra.
Yeah, I thought we had like the best. Now I guess they're like lying in a bed, falling in a mattress. But in there was a lot of that. This big spring in the middle. Compared to what we were used to, they were good rings. Compared to what other people, what other guys are accustomed to now, maybe they were horrible at the time. But compared to some of the things I came out of, whoa.
Well, I'll tell you what, right? We'll move away from the ring, and we're sort of staying in the ring, I suppose. We're going to go to Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, he had a dark side of the ring last week as we record this. So this is Monday you're going to make me have my glasses on now, what's it? The 14th. I had to look at my computer to see that. So we're recording this on Monday the 14th. So the week beforehand, it was the last time it was Dynamite, but we'll do that in a different episode. The week before was Jake the Snake Roberts, and the first question I always seem to ask you when we do this is the first time you met Jake.
I was in Charlotte for the summer. I was working down south. I was supposed to be working out of Atlanta, and then I got crossed over between Charlotte and Atlanta. I guess because they're using me because I just come off of the New York TV. So, I was advantageous. I had that many hours put it on the TV. So he was in the Charlotte area when I first met him. And it was after he'd traveled through, he'd been through Louisiana and a couple of the other, Texas, I guess, and a couple of the other territories. He was, a tremendous talent. The Briscoes turned me on. So watch this guy, Jake the Snake. He can work like hell, and he's an excellent guy on the mic, and he was, yeah, tremendous performer.
So you never saw him when he was doing the refereeing, then?
No. I never really in Charlotte. I got to know him a good bit, around a few towns and stuff. I think we're probably basically different towns. For some reason, they just get like that, you get off. And I wasn't there that long. But then when he got to New York, up to WWE, then I got to see him quite a bit.
Yeah. So where would you say that? I mean, you mentioned his promos before. Where would you say he ranks for you? I mean, is he a top 10 guy? Is he a top 20 guy? I mean, you've heard so many people do their interviews. Where does Jake rank for you?
Top tier, he's not going to walk out there and knock your socks off like Dusty or maybe Flair or somebody like that. Somebody that's got a real, or maybe me if I was on doing a rant delivery or a real high intense delivery. Although he did have he was up there. He got over as a combination between working and promos and just the attitude and his personality. He got over it. So by the time when his interviews came and they're all on point, he didn't need the yelling or the ranting or the comedy stuff or the I'm going to tear your heart out or feed it to your sister or whatever. He didn't need that. But he could get it would go down there. It would go that direction, but in a logical sense.
Yeah, I mean, he had a really great turn of phrase, of course, and really, really dark from the back of his mind sort of things that he come out with. But my next question is actually to you: is I wonder how much he thought about every interview he did. But the question is for you: how much time did you put into your interviews before you went out and did them? If it was like a money interview that go on national, not just for a local market.
It was different then. We had little spaces that you were cut out where you're inserted into a big bicycle, big vehicle of a program. So you had anywhere from 90-second to 2.5 minute inserts into a portion there. So as we sat there and going through hundreds of interviews in a day, I guess you would keep in your mind, you'd be a professional, and you'd have to be, well, this is before I'm coming out of this match. I'm still doing the promo for this match into the first match, but I'm coming out of this match and we're going into a lumberjack match or a Texas death match or something like that. So I have to leave indications, but I don't want to put everything on the table because next week when I come back for the death match, I want to be more fired up, be more be angry or cocky or whatever, whatever I needed to be. So yeah, everybody had to do that. Or should have done that.
Did you ever write down certain turns of phrase if you thought about them, or did you sort of just bank them in your mind?
At times, yeah, but mostly I'd write them down and then I'd never use them. But most, it would be things that you're standing there and you're trying to bring everything back up, trying to regurgitate all the stuff gone through the week, or, things you've heard and things you've done. So you're playing it off. So it would usually, and I was younger then, so the mind was working a little sharper. So I was able to recall little incidences that I wanted there. And I would record and I would write down. I'm sure most of the guys did. We would take some notes and stuff of, because there's so many things going on. You'd have 2 or 3 major towns like Madison Square Garden, Philadelphia, and Boston, say just in one weekend. So, and probably usually those markets being so big, they would be probably different types of matches anyway. So you'd have to have, categorize in your mind where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to get along with that.
Yeah. Do you remember the very first time? And I imagine it would have been at a Saturday night's main event that you were given a script for the first time to read verbatim.
I wasn't given scripts until only time I was those TNT shoot Fuji shows and those kind of. We weren't. I was gone before they had the promo scripts. Of course, Roy Shires. When I was in California, Roy Shires, he would sit down in the office and you would have different points that he would like. It was like a script, but Friday night here, this building, and it's a lumberjack match, and so and so else is on the floor, so I have to watch out. So he would highlight all those things, and you would highlight them together to be in the, and they would be 3 to 4 minute interviews as well. So and New York was a different, everywhere had a different format, but they're basically we're much alike.
So we will get onto the dark side of the ring, and it actually is the dark side of the ring for the documentary and for the subject. And it wasn't about Jake the Snake Roberts; it was actually about Grizzly Smith, his father. I imagine you probably crossed paths with him a couple of times. And apart from all the horrible stuff that we'll get into in a minute, supposedly quite a nice guy.
I drank the Kool-Aid. I was there, yeah. Guy, nice, great big guy. Heard he didn't know about the Kentuckians, didn't know about. Well, I knew he'd had a good run in the South. He in the locker room with the boys around. He was a gentleman, polite, logical. All the things, engaging. From time to time, guys a little bit older than myself, maybe half a generation or part of a generation. They kind of knew what was going on or had an idea what was going on with Grizzly, but a lot of guys like myself that were probably getting to be the more senior guys in the locker room and stuff, and more in between, we had no idea, had little idea. There were little innuendos that if you didn't know the whole backstory, you didn't know what was going on, So, but I remember Jake coming out one time and just saying, this guy, this pig, he couldn't resist, getting a hold of my mother when she was the daughter, his wife's daughter, and so on. And so that's Jake always had a complex. It was really and can you blame him? That he was part of wrestling, raised wrestling, lived and breathed wrestling, and everybody knew his background and his father's eccentricities.
Yeah. Quite a lot of wrestlers, including Grizzly Smith, used to take their work home with them, basically, and work their family, claim all the injuries were real, especially to their children, and almost, make them fear for their father's life. Do you remember any of the wrestlers who used to really, kayfabe their kids, like Grizzly used to?
When I was first breaking in, Lord Blears, I remember Lord Blears around of course he had, 4 kids, and there were a lot of kids around his house. Well, the rest of their families that didn't really know. I can't, in my time, the families were completely in the dark. I don't, But I know there were some guys, some guys lived on the road, like they did the Iron Sheik as well a few weeks ago. And he was, and his problem, with his wife, he never went home. He was on the road, 300 and something days a year. And, so what was the time? I forget what the topic was.
It was wrestlers telling
carrying it at home. Yeah. So I'm sure like guys like the Sheik and, different, those guys and Grizzly, took it home with them. And this is, my leg sore, especially Grizzly. Your little girl can rub my leg. So that's,
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Grizzly Smith was a predatory paedophile, and if you listen to this, Mum, cover your ears, a fucking cunt. So, there's no other way to put it. He was just a nasty bastard. But
he had a lot of people fooled, though. Myself being one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was like no innuendo, more or less. You're saying, watch out for this guy, sort of thing, or just very little.
Well, it was like the 60s and 70s. There were different times, looking for different, villains, different heroes, different other places,
Yeah. I'll ask one more question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't give any names. But a few months ago, Dave Meltzer did a long piece on Pat Patterson and San Francisco territory. Now, this isn't about Pat Patterson. It's actually about all the groupies that used to hang around the arenas and, get the wrestling and stuff like that. And he would Dave Meltzer made mention that when he was a kid, he noticed that a lot of the girls hanging around there were also really young. Was this just like really common back in the day?
Boy, for San Francisco, I can't remember really anything, much of any. I'm sure that there were some, but as a rule, I don't think there was, steady like down south or other places like that. I'm sure there were, like there was the lady that did Pat's jackets and stuff. I wouldn't call her. She was an older woman, and she was a seamstress and a wrestling fan. There was a family out of Sacramento that would go to those Stockton type towns around there, but I didn't. Northern California, I don't know. Northern California didn't seem to be that type of area that was, a big party time, party after the matches type territory.
He was for Pat.
Pat had a big community there. He was a big player at San Francisco, which was a noted LGBTQ now, but the gay community at the time, and Haight-Ashbury and all those aspects of society at the time. And Pat was a he was a popular guy down there. I don't know how many people, a lot of guys that actually knew he was, in wrestling he was well known that he was a gay wrestler, but what his social circle or what was like in San Francisco, I'm not sure, but it was good. He was, if not a queen, it's certainly a princess.
I'll tell you what, then we'll go straight off Grizzly Smith because he's a miserable bastard. He can go away. Did Jake really invent the DDT?
No. Ooh, no. I can't remember who was doing it before, but I saw it. I saw guys using it quite a while before that.
Yeah.
It was, he used it as a hold, and he used it as a finish, and he took care of it. But actually, after he got through with it, then it just became a high spot, like every other finish in the business is now. The Tombstone, the Undertaker, or whatever.
You did the Tombstone first, though.
Well, second, after the Mexican guy from the tour of the Mexican guys I got from Black Man or Cat Man or Green Man, whatever it was. They were on Perro Guayo. I was on a tour with them, and I picked up a lot of their, some of those backbreakers and some of the moves that they had. That pile driver, I thought was impressive. And I liked it. I used it a lot.
Was it always a finisher for you, or did it sort of? Because I know there was the Asiatic spike at one point as well, which was.
Yeah, that was Eddie Graham and Eddie and Buddy BR's. That was what they wanted to go because they were more solid, and they were solid type guys that could work it. But then when I got into the WWF, I could. It was more rather than holding it down. It's it's a 30 second finish where that pile driver is just being gone. You're finished. So it's it's a different time. Different necessities. Bring one to the other.
And when you did the pile driver, you always used to point to, let's say, Jesse Ventura or Bobby Heenan. How come you always did the point before you did the dropped in with the pile driver?
I was dedicating it to somebody. Yeah. Figured I'd start make sure. Hope Jesse would they ever put me over on the mic instead not burying me.
That's a pro. That is a pro, let me tell you. I'll tell you what, right? I'll skip Dory Funk Jr. and I'll go straight to Georgia. Now, Jake was part of the original Legion of Doom. So there was the Road Warriors and the Spoiler, Don Jardine. Do you remember the Spoiler?
Yes, yeah. Nice man. Good work. He was one of those heels. He was around for a while and did good business with Wahoo in Texas. And before he got used too much, he was a good card, big card with Gary Hart. I think he did well, and around Florida and Georgia. I don't know how he kind of slipped on the card, but he was a headliner for some time. Guys would use him. He was a good hand, good guy, quiet, didn't bother anybody. There's a handful of heels. Bill Eadie, who's as we speak now, I don't know when this is going to play, but I've been seeing that he's got some kind of COVID lung thing or hangover or something. He's been having a rough time. The heart palpitations and lung thing. Bill Eadie, Sergeant Slaughter, even Dr. D, Charles Schultz, and some of those other guys, big men that were great heels, and Jake was right in the Jake. I don't know. He worked his way in there.
Well, he was booking the Georgia territory at one point. Do you remember? Were you there at the time when he was booking, or was that not a crossover?
No. I was there. I was there for NWA when they Tom Ernesto. I came out of first. I came out of Florida. They would use me out of Florida for tag matches or something. I don't know. I guess they were keeping Bob Armstrong away because Bob Armstrong was the Atlanta boy that went home. So I was filling in, and they just, I guess, trying to give him a rest. So they'd bring me up as like Andre's tag partner, or other. They wanted Andre or Harley dropped the Georgia title before he took the world title, and so they put it on me for a couple weeks and different moves like that because they were cooling off the guys that were primarily, Georgia, Tommy Rich, Bob Armstrong, a couple of other guys that were area, kind of trying to clean the slate more or less before they got back the hometown flavor back in for the fans.
Was your leaving Georgia? Now, actually, someone asked me a question about this as well. But was this the time when you left quite quickly due to Ole?
No, it was earlier. Earlier when I was going back and forth between Atlanta. Later when I left was after my first run in WWF, and I went down there and been on the phone, and we were supposed to tag up with Wahoo, and they had a world tag team belt that was and work around a little while with there. Then I was going to double cross Wahoo and get into something there, and none of that seemed to really materialize, and everything kind of fell by the side.
Well, just before Vince McMahon bought the majority shares from the Briscoes in the Georgia territory, the big deal in Georgia was Jake the Snake versus Ronnie Garvin. You must have a story about Ronnie Garvin.
He used to fly the plane. He used to fly his own plane.
Ronnie
from
did?
territory. Yeah, he had a single engine or twin engine, just a prop plane. And he was a good pilot, so they didn't have to waste. They didn't do a lot of driving. So he flew a lot around the Georgia area, and the he never spent. I don't think he spent a lot of time in Florida, or not when I was there. But I wasn't in Georgia a lot. They would farm me out for a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, and then I came back after Texas. I left. That's when I going through a divorce and stuff. So I left Texas and I came back and I worked for several months there in Georgia. But Jake hadn't entered the territory then. But Ronnie Garvin was there. But I was a baby face. He was a baby face. So I never worked with him. I never worked with him against him. But I watched him. Then I think I came back to Hawaii and the TBS was on, the international channel, all over the place. I liked his work. I thought he was a good worker, hard worker, a little undersized, but it got by. New York was pretty much the only territory that featured the king size heels and stuff. So as a heel, especially down south, good heel, good guys didn't have to be overly, big or small. It didn't matter.
I've got to ask this though, Jake Roberts. Did you ever hear, I don't even know where you were at the time, but Jake Roberts no-sold Muhammad Ali's punches in like a Mid-South Super Show. Do you remember hearing about that at the time?
No. I read about it. No, I didn't know. I didn't know about that.
Jake the Snake Roberts comes into the WWF. He's given the Snake Pit, which eventually replaces Piper's Pit, and he wears some of the weirdest stuff, like that I imagine were his genuine clothes that he came to the arena in. Was he the weirdest dresser in the locker room?
I don't remember him wearing all that stuff. He had the snake skin. He had different snake skin vests and some other stuff, but I don't remember. Not like you mean like the Grand Wizard, or somebody like that, dressing up like that.
Oh, no, I mean like in like hotels and stuff, just doing the shopping.
No, he was. In fact, he put on some weight one time, and Vince pulled him away. Was teasing him. He said, "Oh, you're Linda, his wife, is losing that Tom Selleck look. They liked him for Magnum PI and stuff like you need to cut back a little bit. You're losing that Tom. They have the mustache and everything else."
Well, you brought up the snakes in boots, so I've got to ask the snake. Where did the snake come from?
I guess different parts of the area. He may have had one or two, like a go-to snake, maybe a regular Damien snake. I don't know how many he killed, but different areas. It wasn't easy traveling with a snake the way we traveled. So the office got most of the snakes. They would go to I guess wherever the big cities there that they have the rentals. You want to rent a dog or a bear or something like that. You need for a show or that you're putting on. So they would get a lot of rentals for I remember because it was in Australia in Sydney they had one, and they got the one in Perth that got away from him. And
what? Well, you've got to tell us that story.
Well, Jake would come in the locker room, turn to the big, usually we had, pretty decent locker rooms. And WWE was pretty well, decent buildings. So we'd have there'd usually be a nice shower in the, shower area, like athletic room or whatever, showers for the wrestlers of the team or whatever it was. So he'd take his snake and put it in there and turn the water on lightly and let it, just let it cool in the shower. So, and damn bulldogs came in. I think they turned on the hot water once when the snake was in there and it came in there. That was a mad snake. It was pissed off. But this one time in Perth, he did the same thing, put his snake in the shower, turned on the water, walked off. Nobody's really watching. Nobody really paid attention unless he walked in the shower. He saw the huge python in there. So he put the snake, walked off, came back, and the snake was gone. So what? Somebody, he's fooling around. What happened? And what happened? The snake had taken off and crawled down the toilet in Perth. And they had the systems they had 2 or 3 locker rooms together. And each locker room had its own bathroom, own toilet, bathroom, series of showers or whatever. So the snake had got into the plumbing and got in one end. His head came out of the toilet in the next room. So they couldn't get the thing out of there. They couldn't get it out. Couldn't get out of the plumbing for the time for Jake's. I don't know. It might have to be before his match. I don't think he ever got it. So I don't think they could never get this. And then went back. So they left. I guess a couple of days later, somebody was sitting on the commode and the snake popped its head out. I think that'd have to be one of the biggest screams I've ever taken in my life.
Do you remember how many times he killed the snake? Because I know at least one that Jim Duggan said where he left it in the car during a snowstorm. He just forgot it was there. And Jim Duggan describes, they open the boot of the car and Jim Duggan's 2x4 is in the back of the car, and right next to it is the snake, just as long and just as stiff and just as straight as the 2x4. So they had to ring the guy and say, "You need to send us another snake." Do you remember any other times where Jake managed to kill one?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm sure he probably did. That was a chore. That was like a Herculean feat to be carrying that snake around. I mean,
yeah.
Not to mention, putting it in your bedroom or keeping it in your bedroom. You're living in motels every night. You keep it in a hotel. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be sleeping real. It was in a cage or something. But lots of times you just had him in that bag.
Mm. Do you remember any time that someone got bitten by the snake or overly strangled?
No. Just that time he had Macho. Well, that was the Cobra. He had the Macho, Cobra bite Macho. But then I guess he got, he had the Jake said he hadn't wanted him to have the snake bite him as well to prove it wasn't poisonous.
Right, so you got to tell us, and I know a few names, but who was most afraid of the snake? Who'd see it and run a mile?
Well, JYD at first, or some of the black fellows were legendary. Didn't like then JYD would have walking around with the snake, scaring other people. I'm sure there were people that didn't like, weren't too crazy about the snake. It's a wrestling locker room, a lot of macho men, walking around, a lot of alpha didn't want to put the snake over too much. There was a couple guys. They don't come to mind right now, but there were a couple guys that were.
Well, I wrote a few names. Andre, Ted DiBiase said he was scared. I think Piper might have been terrified of him, and definitely Kamala.
Okay. I didn't know Piper was terrified, but it's possible. And Andre, he may have just not been in the mood. Yeah.
And as an impartial outsider, who had the worst job? Was it Coco Beware with the parrot, Jake with the snake, or was it Dynamite and Davey with the bulldog? Who was like the hardest pet to look after?
Bulldog. Matilda, yeah, she was a thing. Soil their rooms, dig for and you're gonna give an animal to those those two animals. You're just looking for mistreatment just looking for mistreatment. And I guess she didn't like kids. She would. She did. I think it's Prince Harry, the one that's wrestling now, traveling around the world. I think she bit him one time. In the second story of Davy's house in Calgary, he threw her out the window, and she survived. And
well, really, Christ,
yeah. But David, mercifully they didn't leave her with the dynamite, so Davy would take her home, and she bit Davy's boy one time.
I heard Matilda was on the gas at one point as well.
Who's that?
Matilda the dog. I heard she got a few shots of steroids here and there.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. The kid from Pittsburgh got shot up there. They were.
I don't know that one. You'll have to tell me that one. Christ.
The referee's son. He was.
Joey Morello.
He was challenged. No, not Joe. Called him Chachi. They actually had a character. After I left, there was a character that Eugene. I think Eugene was. Eugene was the boy's name, and he loved the Bulldogs. They would bring him. They would bring him girly magazines, and he'd run off in the bathroom. They'd trim his hair for him. Oh, I don't know how they got away with stuff they did. They had a needle, they'd stick him, an empty needle, and he'd get mad, Oh, I don't know. Harley let him get away with it. Harley loved the dynamite, so he pretty much, if you got a hard pass from Harley, you get away with it. And one night they just chopped that kid's hair all up to pieces, and then God, it was just it was brutal.
I think we can sum that up as it was a different time. We'll go straight on to Ricky Steamboat then. So the first big feud I think in the WWF was for Jake Jake versus Ricky. And eventually they'd have the snake versus... They kept calling it a dragon. It was obviously like an alligator, a little small alligator with a rubber band around its face. But Ricky Steamboat, is he just the ultimate baby face?
Yes, he was. Great worker. Great. Always willing to contribute to the match. Always had ideas. Always willing, to go the extra mile. I had a big, long program with him before anybody else, when he first came into the area. I had along Fuji and I tied the judo belt around his neck and hung him over the side of the ring. And this one I had a torn rotator too. So trying to get him over that top rope was just a Herculean effort because my shoulder wasn't working. But yeah, he was always. I only think he used that dragon for a couple of the big shows. I don't think he had to carry it around. But that's another guy. He got that whole gimmick. That was after he'd made the run through me, through Macho Man, through Jake, and he'd already left and then went back to, I think it was NWA or WCW that guy had that snake form or that dragon form, wasn't it?
I think 86. The big event. It was in Toronto. That's 60,000 plus seater.
So that was WWE.
Yeah, that was in 86. I think he had the alligator dragon / thing going on.
Right, yeah.
I'll tell you what then. It was a few months before the big event, I believe, that kicked off their big feud. Jake DDT's Ricky on the floor. Do you remember seeing Ricky getting? They got the spatula out and scooped him out, but apparently he was knocked out cold. Was that for real?
Yeah. Yeah, Jake told him he couldn't do it. He said, I can't. And I said, well, just go ahead and try. See if, He said, I can't do it. I'm going to knock him silly. And he knocked him silly. So, yeah, he had a big horn sticking out of his head.
Do you remember, what's the difference? I mean, I know obviously what the difference is, but a concrete floor and a really hard ring. Why is it so much harder to work out a DDT on the concrete floor than it is on a very hard ring?
Well, you get to give on your back first, and you're able to protect the head. So even if the head goes through after a while, it's coming down onto a mat. If there's no space left, but it comes down, so you're basically breaking the fall with your shoulders and your back, and on a floor there's nowhere to, you just hit cold. There's no penetration. There's no bounce. There's no nothing there to come down. So you just go straight into the floor. And Jake knew that. He told him that, and that's what happened.
I was like, you can't even apologize. Like, I'm not apologizing. I told you that was exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm sure he's supposed to feel bad about it.
We'll go straight on then. So one of the things that Jake actually mentions in Dark Side of the Ring is, and also in his documentary, Pick Your Poison, the WWE one that on DVD quite a while ago, was that he had the worst luck ever because he was paired up with Hulk Hogan to go on the house shows in the main event, and he ended up having to be pulled off from the main event really quickly. Do you remember why?
No.
It's because the fans were cheering him too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there was a place. After a while, your champion always has that problem. Look at John Cena. He's been, 12, 15 years there, and he was never, until he got in a major match, he was never all the way. So Jake was that type of character, He was the snake, the cool, the not yelling, all his movements. He wasn't overly active. Everything he did was right, but it wasn't overly demonstrative. So people just liked him, in a sense, So yeah, the same thing happened to Dino Bravo in Montreal. Huh. They didn't want Hulk to work with Dino there.
Was there anybody else who was just too popular for Hogan to work with? Do you remember?
Gee, I wouldn't. You have to ask Hulk there. I'm sure Hulk would ixnay anybody that that didn't seem to be. And that's why he wasn't 2 and 3 returns with Roddy. Because they'd have to figure out so many finishes not to beat Piper. And Hulk wanted to get his hand raised too. Two guys clashing like that. One guy who couldn't afford to be pinned and didn't want to didn't want to be pinned, and then another guy who wanted the constant adulation and the constant thrill of victory, agony, defeat thing going on.
Yeah. Do you remember any towns that Hulk Hogan really, really, it just took him a long time to get fully over in? Like, some people just wouldn't accept him.
No. Because if he got to LA and he hit in LA, and the West Coast was the hardest. West Coast was the hardest. The East Coast was pretty much money in the bank. West Coast was hard. So when he first, maybe not when he first went through LA, but or West Coast. After a while, when he got to the West Coast and solidified himself in the West Coast, he was in. So his showing on the West Coast kind of validated his stuff on the East Coast and through the Midwest, that he was that over, that he was the Hulk.
So in 1987, or actually it might have been late 86, Jake turns good guy. He's doing the Snake Pit, and he's with the Honky Tonk Man. And the Honky Tonk Man with Jimmy Hart comes out, sneaks around the set, and smashes him over the head with a guitar. Mick Foley described as the most expensive guitar money could buy. Honky disputes this enormously and says it was heavily treated to explode, and then it didn't. What do you remember of that day? Because it was a bit of a brouhaha in the back.
Yeah, well, he blasted that thing all over the place. He knocked the hell out of him. So I wasn't part of that. I've been on part of those angles before, though, where it's Barry Windham was supposed to come and hit me in the back of the head, over the back of the head with a chair. And if you're seeing it, you can prepare yourself. But if you're standing there pretty much blind and you don't know when you're getting hit or how you're getting hit, it's a scary it's a scary piece, you know, if you're waiting there to to get something get smashed over the head. You don't know exactly when it's coming. And if you're looking at it, you can at least tense up, but if your back's to it, you don't know what's happening, you're going to get hurt.
Jake ascribes his escalation in drug addiction to this incident because apparently he was in a lot of pain. He suffered 2 cracked vertebrae in his neck from it. Surely he wasn't a choir boy before this time?
No. Yeah, it was the cocaine era. Cocaine, and some of those guys were really like the crack, smoking the crack, and whether it contributed to to furthering the decline or now that all the stories came out about Grizz and his upbringing and the families and all that stuff, you can understand a drug habit, a drug reliance, and type of disconnect, a mental disconnect for that. So, and that, but I think he just let himself feed off of that situation to where, it worked both ways. It worked for him and it worked against him,
I've got to ask this then. Who was the absolute hardest partier in the WWF?
Well, after I guess Flair, would have to be, and that was after I was gone. Flair was always notorious. Everybody else was pretty much on the same wavelength. Would have their nights or have their weekends or something. Adrian was up there. He got out there pretty well. Buddy Rose, a couple guys, all the guys that got really off track. It was hard. It was hard. It was hard traveling. No family, and you're going all the time. I look back and I saw some old tapes that I never even realized. I did an interview promos with Oprah Winfrey. I didn't know it was Oprah. And I'm looking back now and oh my God. And I looked back at a Fuji hospital thing. And I was hitting on the nurse the whole time. And I don't remember that. I don't remember being funny either, But I always thought the Moolah was my love interest in all those movies. I didn't realize that, that whole skit was me hitting on the nurse. But, things go by, when you're in that rat race that it was, you're getting up in the morning. This is a weekend after a full weekend. You're driving down in the morning now for hopefully an evening show in Baltimore or Washington, or maybe you're catching a plane out of there in the afternoon. You didn't know or had to drive somewhere else. But you're going up in the morning, you're doing that, whatever 2, 3, 4 hours, wherever your segment showed up in that filming, then you're on to workout, then you're on to the town, then you're off to your next town the next day. So I mean, there are things that happen that you went through so fast that you don't have that only when they show it to you. Oh, did that really? Did that happen? Did that go off? Did that did that really? Oprah Winfrey. I had I had a chance to, and so I did. I remember interviewing, and I did a lousy straight interview. I'm going to beat him because I'm a tough guy, and I just did a straight interview with her, where I could have, hey baby, we're going to go grooving downtown, and you and I are going to be dancing at the hottest bar, and the hottest nightclub in the place. Me and Oprah hitting and tearing up Chicago and stuff, after I win the belt from dirty old Hulk Hogan and stuff like that, and I look back and oh God, what a wasted opportunity! I'm just doing I'm just in a dead ass straight interview with Oprah Winfrey, when I could have been done, all kinds of stuff, the Pepe Le Pew or so, something like that,
And just one more thing on partying as well. When was the first time coke was really like a big thing in wrestling, and who sort of was the main instigator in bringing cocaine into the locker room? Do you remember?
Oh God, just social phenomenon, just like everywhere else. It started in the late '70s. I remember in Florida. It was pretty good, pretty strong. And then in the WWE for the first few years, it was a plague there. And then it seemed like, dark side, I don't know. And they make, with all the contributions over the last month and a half of all the wrestlers, who have drug problems and they focused on all the people being dark side, but the other things had gone with them as well. We're musicians, rock, actors, a lot of people in the art, and a lot of people not in the arts. Truck drivers and school teachers and stuff were all affected. It was the CIA mapped it all out for us. And it got away from the ghetto communities and then entered suburbia, and that was a big mistake on the government's part for the United States, because it was initially planned to subvert the black communities, ghetto areas, and sell money to pay for arms and weapons and stuff in South America or Israel or places like that. And then, but it spilled over from the underprivileged communities to become like a national phenomenon.
Yeah, I've seen Blow with Johnny Depp a number of times, Boston George. So if you've not seen that film, it's definitely recommended. If you've never seen it, you must have seen
Boston George.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You must have seen Blow. Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz.
Oh, Blow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought there was yeah.
Right, we'll carry on to the wrestling theme then, and a couple of words on Rockin' Robin. Do you remember Rockin' Robin? Because she was really at the tail end of your tenure there.
She's a nice lady. I saw her in the thing. Poor girl. She's we've all aged. That was 30-something years ago when she was 87. She was she was really the first single lady to get a push. And she got in there, and I don't know I guess Sherry was already there, but it was man-made for he'd been using Moolah's girls for they'd come through on on their tour like they did like the all the time anyway. They 4 girls in a car, and they travel, or 2 and 2. I don't know how they traveled, but they traveled all over the United States. They go to one territory for 2 or 3 weeks, working around, and maybe work a return, and then out of there and on to the next territory. There, and like the midgets, and like Andre at one time, before Vince Senior took over all his bookings. They would just go into the area as a novelty, and then be out. But then Robin came in, probably as a result of Jake and of Grizz, that she got in, and she was a hell of a, she's a hell of a hand. Not the whole family. The whole family was, Sam Houston, Jake, and they're all good hands in the ring. Nobody could put down their work, and she seemed to be in an opportune time where they were having a time, and it was coming out of Wendy Richter, and Wendy Richter was having problems with Moolah, but Moolah was still locked in, with Vince, and still had the contract with Vince for her girls and stuff. So Robin fit right into the spot where she was a nightly performer, a nightly And she was in the European. She went to Europe. She went to Europe with us. With I probably Sherry. I don't remember which girl she was working with. She was traveling. She played the piano, and she'd get to the hotel or something, start belting out some tunes and stuff. She was a real nice person, and you didn't know she was had all the trouble. I heard rumors from Fuji that but it didn't show, and she didn't act. She didn't act weird, depressed or whatever.
Oh, right, rumors of Grizzly Smith and
Yeah.
that whole thing. Yeah. Speaking of Rockin' Robin, because we will get back to her in a second, but Jim Cornette in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, said that Sam Houston was the best in-ring performer of the entire family. How true is that for you?
I don't know. He was a good, Sam was a good hand. Oh, how are you gonna pick him over Jake when Jake had worked his whole way into all these, massive Macho Mans and George Steels and Steamboats, and when Jake's worked his way into all these great angles, great great positions in professional wrestling. And you say this other guy's a better worker? Yeah, come on. That's promos, delivery. Jake was there. He had to make a comeback. Jake was there. Jake was. If he had to jump around, if he had to do a lot of high spots, I'm sure Jake could have done it. If he had to do that, moving, dancing, running cowboy style and everything else. But Jake was, he was a snake. He just easy, smooth from spot to spot, slither around, tie the interviews in with his work. That's, you're gonna say somebody's a better worker. You probably need a lot more proof than that.
Sam Houston had a relatively short tenure on top. He came back maybe a couple of times in the WWF, and then he was gone in 1990. Do you remember? I don't think he was one of the most popular people in the locker room. Do you remember any reasons why?
No, he was. No, I don't know why he would. He was a nice guy. He wasn't. Was he with the ex-wife first, Nicola?
Baby Doll. I don't think Baby Doll came over with him, or she might have done for a tryout.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. He was, he always said hello, shook hands. Easy to work with. I heard later he had drinking. I've read in the, continually he had problems drinking, or he liked to drink a lot. But I never saw him, at the arena, or blow anything out of shape.
No.
Screw up like that.
Well, I think it was something, maybe that was earlier in his tenure, because Magnum TA said he was, a bit of a heavy drinker and everything. But we'll go back to Rockin' Robin for a second. And I wanted to make mention of, because I'll channel Conrad Thompson here and say, I don't know when we're ever going to get to bring him up again, but Rockin' Robin was trained by Nelson Royal. Do you remember Nelson Royal?
Oh, no. I met him only a handshake a couple times. He was old timer. He got a good 10, 15 years on me. So he was ahead of my time. I think Jerry Briscoe knew him. Jerry Briscoe wrestled with him. Spent a lot of time with him up in Charlotte. He was around the Charlotte area, the Crockett's and those guys for a while. And down south, he was a Southern boy. I don't know if he was actually from the South, but ended up at Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Alabama kind of cycle down there. I think he finished up down there. I'm not sure where he was from.
I had 5 questions about Nelson Royal, but I'll just skip across all of those. Then we'll go straight to Rick Rude. The Rick Rude feud centered around Jake's wife Cheryl. Now, in another interview with Jim Duggan, actually I'll bring that up in a second. But Rick Rude tries to kiss Cheryl, and then she announces that Jake is her husband, and then that's where the feud starts. And then in an interview many years later, Jim Duggan says that Cheryl was kissing quite a lot of wrestlers backstage. Have you any memory of any of this at all?
I wasn't one of them. No.
I wasn't accusing you.
No, yeah. I remember her around, and I remember, that they did get a little dicey with their angles with her pictures on Rick, that he'd have airbrushed either on his pants or his shirt and stuff, and doing stuff with that, and it was good heat for Jake and good heat for Rick. She was, as far as I know, she was always a lady with everybody. Hello, goodbye, how are you? Nobody else didn't have much time. She was, whether she was kissing guys around the locker room, I have no idea. That's just, yeah. I think Duggan and Jake were close. They were good friends from Louisiana or something, so maybe he didn't like her.
Maybe he was doing the kissing. Who knows? I've nothing to back that up, by the way. That's purely made up by me, lawyers. Was there anyone else who brought their wives along with them on the road, apart from obviously Savage, and then we found out a few weeks ago on another dark side of the ring, Ultimate Warrior brought his first wife around as well. Was there anyone else who travelled with their family?
Steamboat traveled with his first wife for a while before she had a kid. She went around, and you could tell she wanted to be on TV. She stayed out. She was, but given the opportunity, boom, she jumped right in there. But she was a nice lady, Bonnie Steamboat at the time. She was a nice lady and didn't interfere in anybody's business or anything like that. Most of the ladies that were there, well, they were either in the business, Robin or Sherry or a couple of the other girls, or even the girls that came in from Moolah, and then later on Liz and Jake's wife Cheryl. They never, they never made any waves. Later, I heard, and only heard because I don't even know the Missy Hyatt and Sunny and some of those other girls were, quite active in the locker room and the wrestlers and stuff. But that was before my time. So all the ladies involved when I was around were strictly that, ladies, and all high virtue.
So after the 80s, you leave in 88, so we'll skip around the rest of Jake's WWF and WCW career because you weren't there for it. But did you ever see Jake preaching in the mid-90s?
I went to Australia with him. I got my hand. I had this hand crushed in a forklift.
Oh, wow.
So I was when I was working longshore. I was a longshoreman by then, and I had retired. So it was in the early 90s, 93, 94. I'm not sure which tour. And the guy was cheap. The promoter was cheap. At first, they tried to put us in. Tried to match us up to room partners, for 2 room partners. They put Jake in them. Jake smoked cigarettes and I snored. So had a match made in heaven. That was the first deal where the guys were coming out with gimmicks. They're coming up with the Polaroid, and he brought a couple of Polaroids with him to Australia. He was making $800,000 a night. I mean, they would line up, and they'd come in. He'd take a guy, a referee or somebody, and he'd give them a couple of $100 or something. They'd stand there, and they'd line up one by one and take their picture with Jake for X amount of dollars, and he made a bundle of money. After the first night, Jake said, "The hell with this! I can give me my own room." So it worked out good for us. Yeah. He was making a bunch of money, and they're paying for part of his room.
I take it on the second day, you got a Polaroid as well and started doing the same thing.
No. I was that was his gimmick. I wasn't gonna. I think a couple other guys I think got with it, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to crash his line.
So obviously Jake in recent years really turn his life around. Do you ever see him much, or did you ever see him much when you were travelling over on the convention circuit? And was he looking healthy? When was the last time you saw him?
Last time I saw him was I saw him once after that, because we went to Australia. We had our last night in Sydney. So me, Jake, Junkyard, and Jim Neidhart. We're going out downtown Sydney. So I was looking for a piece of pizza at King's Cross in Sydney. So I was looking for a piece of pizza for it to come in. And they're in a bar. So I walk in. There's Neidhart. He hands me a triple vodka on the rocks with the soda. As I'm walking, I see that, and they're all looking around, and they're trying to score, trying to get some blow for the. I grabbed that, I went in one door, and I went right out the other door. And I pretty much passed on from. I left that devil behind me a couple of years ago. I took the vodka with me, and it came in handy. But that was the end of my night bar hopping with those three.
When you started with Jake, JYD, Jim Neidhart, and then you started with pizza, I was thinking, what? This doesn't tally up at all. And then the vodka comes straight in afterwards.
Yeah, no, I walked in and one move is thank you, goodbye, have a good night, everybody, enjoy. And they didn't turn up again till the next morning around noon.
So I'll tell you what, we'll wrap it up with. We're always going to wrap it up with the Fuji story of the week. But any final thoughts on Jake the Snake, or any stories that we've not brought up? Because I know you've got for people that don't know, Don has a book that he writes. Little thoughts and notes throughout whatever, and occasionally to reference to for stories that he doesn't want to forget. So is there anything for Jake that you remembered?
No, I just it was just horrible watching the amount of abuse that he went through. His fans, he and Sam and Robin, because they're all good people basically, And Jake may have been a rat, in business and stuff and taking care, but to deal with him and to on a day-to-day basis, he was very livable, very likable guy. Conversation, he wasn't out there. You could have, and his in-ring, well, his whole business persona was top notch. You could. Right up there with anybody, with your Flairs or your Cenas or any. Naturally, he was short-sighted. He was cut short because his drug use and drug abuse. So he shot himself in the foot there. But he was as good a performer, as good an entertainer as ever, as anyone. He could carry. When he was in the right mind, when he was in the right frame of mind, and when he could carry any angle, any show, any territory, as far as he could go. Had a brilliant mind. When it was working, to go on into the next step 1, step 2, step 3, he had it all. He had everything, and it's looking back now, you can see why he had a lot of his demons.
You mentioned he was a bit of a rat. I've got any examples where he was a pain in the arse to the office or management?
No, just I don't know that he actually went to the office, but he was just he was Jake the Snake. He manipulate and he'd get his he'd get his way done and different things. He wasn't by far from being a stupid man. No way was he, not categorize him that. Very intelligent, very talented guy. As well as the rest of the family.
Sorry, excuse me. We always end on, we'll say always, we've done it for 2 weeks now. We always end on a Mr. Fuji story of the week. Do you have anything for us this week?
Yeah. I had to write this one down because I remember, and this was kind of a rib. It was partially on me and partially on Bulldog Spot, and he didn't like Bulldog Spot for some reason.
Is it Moondog?
We're in Buffalo. Moondog, yeah. So we're in Buffalo. We're in Buffalo, New York, and I think it's a Holiday Inn, and it's across the street from some other motels and hotels, and there's the eating place down at the end of the block. Now, if you're familiar with Buffalo is one of those cities on the lake. When I say on the lake, it's north, it just gets snow. You're just packed in with snow. Snow, above your head. You can't see it. So I borrowed Spot's car to go across the street one night. So I wanted to grab some chicken wings and, a couple of piece of pizza and stuff. So you couldn't walk because there was a big median in there, and it was piled high with snow, and the road was covered with, was dangerous to go down the road. So you had to drive to go, just to go a block, to go around that and come back down, go back on. So I borrowed Spots. They had to rent a car. I borrowed the car, went, got my chicken wings and stuff, and came back, and I guess I picked up some couple slices for food. Saito or whoever it was said, okay. So somehow he got the keys. He knew I was back, and he knew what car I was in because he was waiting for the pizza when I got back. So somehow they got the guys to go through cleaning the parking lot when big snows happen. So he found the guy with the scooper, with the backhoe, with the scooper. So he had the guy scoop it up and drop all the ice on top of the car, all the snow on top of Larry Latham's car. So it was covered with snow. You couldn't see. So when he came out in the morning, there was no car there. What the hell did I do with the car? I had the keys. I didn't get arrested, thrown in jail. The keys were there, everything, but no car. And I give him the keys back to Moondog before and there was no car. So we had to go on. We were going on to Pittsburgh. We had to be there for interviews, and poor Moondog's running around going crazy looking for his car, and nobody could find it. There was no car to be found. Just a big mound of snow, just big piles of snow. So so after a month or two or however long,
a month,
the weather, when the weather changed, because like I said, Buffalo doesn't get warm until about July, and then it cools back off in August. So sometime in that period, after we left, the sun had come out, and he got the guy to take the snow carrier, the snow plow, and throw all the snow on top of the car. Then he took a garden hose and washed the whole car down. So it wasn't until weeks or months later, when the snow melted, that they found the car. There it was sitting right where it had been parked. But it had been buried under a mountain of snow.
Do you remember how much did that cost him in the end?
Oh, I don't know. He had to turn it in. Police, missing car, stolen car, all kinds of. They were looking for the rent-a-car people sent their cars, everything. There was I'm sure there's an APB for a stolen car out there, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it was. He had a knot on his head, and it would grow when he got worried or frustrated. And then that thing was big and blue on poor old Spot's head. Oh, that was on me and Spot. That was Harry Fujiwara for you.
You didn't have to chip in, did you? You didn't have to chip into the rental.
No. I wasn't riding with them. I was riding with somebody else. And they were gone. They had left for the evening somewhere. And I just wanted, a couple of chicken wings and a slice of pizza across the street, which was, I couldn't get a taxi wouldn't come. And I couldn't get across the street. So,
Did Fuji just have the best poker face? Or like if you challenged him, would he just go, "You've got me"?
Fuji?
Yeah. Would he ever admit to it? Like if you challenged him and said you did this, would he never admit to it?
No, his It's Fuji's favorite slide, so I have to investigate this case. I came after me, and everybody, as it turned out in the territory, everybody else picked up this line. Oh, we must have, somebody was ribbing, or the Bulldogs cut somebody's back Jack's pants off, or somebody got chained to a bench. Oh, we must investigate this case. Mr. Fuji must investigate.
Well, for this one, let's say case closed. We know who did it. We know who buried the car in the snow for all those months, and we're going to sign off. We're going to sign off on this podcast. I'm even going to look in the right camera this time. So thank you very much for watching or listening, however you absorb this podcast / YouTube show, however you want to phrase it. You can find us on Twitter, easy for me to say, on Don Muraco Pod. You can find us on YouTube, Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, iTunes and all that stuff for the podcast, and DonTheRockMorocco.com for all your signed stuff from Don, photos, figures, cards, and all that type of jazz. But for now, I'm James. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Don, for entertaining us once again.
Lord, thank you for coming.